Welcome to this week's Cow Daily. Alice isn't with us until later in the show because we're blessed to have a guest here with us this week from the top of the show. We've got Alison from Your Pet Foodbank. So I'll just bring Alison in. How you doing, mate? You good?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Sound. What's that light in the background? There was some. It looked like you were being invaded by aliens behind you there.
Oh, it's possibly another monitor, maybe.
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm just making the nice. How strict anyway, mate? You've been busy today.
Yes. So I had a day off from my normal job that I do. So I've just been going around doing deliveries and collections of pet food.
Honestly, I have to say, I was talking to my partner earlier today, and I said I may just be about to have a chat with an actual real life angel. Like seriously, we've got 3 dogs, right? So you literally, you're the most captive audience possible is right here. Like, First thing I want to ask you is though, like, you were saying that you're obviously doing Your Pet Foodbank, and that's a community interest company.
Yeah,
but you also work as well. Like, how do you, before I ask you how you started the food bank, how do you manage that? Like, how does that work for you?
My time management skills have had to increase greatly. So yeah, I have 2 other jobs, and then basically just one evening, I'd heard a few stories anecdotally about people struggling to, be able to afford to feed their pets, and they were having to give them up. And I mean, I have a cat, and the thought of having to give him up because I couldn't feed him, it just doesn't bear thinking about. So I just put out like a bit of a feeler with my friends on Facebook and just said, I've had this idea. Would anybody think it'd be any good? And I got quite a lot of positive responses. Yeah. So just thought, well, okay, let's give it a go, see how it goes. And it, we set up in April last year. Yeah. And it's just grown massively.
Well, I mean, obviously we found out about it recently as well, and hence why we reached out and we're really keen to have you on, because it's just such a wonderful idea. And it's I think there's a lot of people maybe wouldn't think about it. Obviously, during cost of living crisis and whatever, a lot of people will think about like how it affects human beings. Like I was reading about what you do, and you're saying you're working alongside human food banks. Can you tell me how like that works and how you get referrals and vice versa?
Yeah, so I've set up communication links with different food banks in the area, and community centres and churches that do food parcels for people. And basically, if they have pets and they are attending those services and they're accessing the food banks, then they can ask for pet food, and we supply it directly to the food banks.
I see.
Initially, when I started out, we were doing individual referrals, but there's not that many of us, and we were getting quite overwhelmed. And this way, people are going through a vetting process to make sure that it does actually go to the most vulnerable and the most in need, rather than just saying, oh yeah, I can't feed my pet. This way they've actually been vetted by a food bank, and they are the people that are in the most financial distress.
Good stuff. So that was one of the questions that was asked today, actually, by people, like what was the process and how do people go around like sort of like getting access to it? I think that's great. And you also mentioned like sort of in your area, like what area are you based in?
So I'm in Sheffield, up north.
A fine city.
It is.
I love Sheffield. It's a good place, isn't it?
It is a good place. So I'm in Sheffield, but we have started branching out. So then we were doing Rotherham and Doncaster, and now we cover South Yorkshire, and we've just taken on West Yorkshire as well. So we're gradually growing and spreading, and hopefully we'll be able to help more people.
So the CD idea was yours, and in a year you're already expanding into other areas, Yorkshire, like West Yorkshire and whatnot. Like, how has that affected capacity, like in terms of the amount of people? Like, how many people are actually involved now? Like, how does it work?
So we now have 28 different drop-off points, and we've got 14 volunteers that help out with collecting the donations if they've gone to, say, a business, and then helping to distribute that food as well to the different food banks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So obviously you're an animal lover yourself. So you got a cat in that. Like, tell us some stories about like how people have been helped, because like, Jesus, man, it's like I was thinking about this, right? And one of my main fears is being homeless. Like, I like to say, oh, I'm not very scared of many things. Of course, I'm scared of loads of things, but one of the main ones is being homeless. All right, and obviously, I mentioned earlier, I've got 3 dogs. Like, I was thinking about like, what would I be like in that position? Like, how would would I have to get rid of me dogs? Has there been like a big upsurge in like pets in need, like pet owner? I don't know how to. It's so new. I don't know what the term is. Like since the pandemic and cost of living, is there a big upsurge in this?
Do you know, it's been excuse me, sorry, it's been absolutely insane, the increase that we've seen.
Really?
So when we first started out, we were maybe doing about 200 meals a week. And then recently, so at the start of this year, just to give you an example, the start of this year in January, we did roughly 2,000 meals that month. And then last month, the numbers are 12,000 meals in a month. It's grown so much. There's so many people in need. So, you know, we also help people that are homeless, and we have people that come through on private referrals from social workers when they're in need. And the number of people that you wouldn't imagine, you know, nurses that are a single parent that are working full time, having to access food banks. And I mean, it's stressful enough having to worry about the petrol prices and worry about, you know, can you do your grocery shopping? Can you put your heating on or whatever, without then having a companion and a best friend that you've maybe had for years and thinking, you know what, I'm going to have to get rid of my animal. And I've had people say, say before, like, I don't want to let my pet down. And that's heartbreaking to think that people think of it that way.
I can feel that, man. It's like anything to do with dogs and animals, and I just get all upset and like I'm on the edge, just so you know. But it's like it's one of them where you just think about like what, and it's there, but for the grace of God, it can literally happen to everybody.
Yeah, it really
anybody could be in this situation. So the fact that you've stepped up out of the goodness of your own heart and doing what you do, it gives us hope. Because there's just so many dickheads about in the world, isn't there? So no, but there is. So it's nice that you're a bit of a dickhead counterbalance. You know what I mean? It does legitimately give us hope, because like doing this, you kind of research a lot. Like if you stick around for later in the show, some of it's like, you know, the dark things that are going on in the world, which I'm sure you're aware of. So it's lush being able to talk to somebody like you, and it's just like, well, you don't like, the goal of a food bank ultimately is not to exist. You know, that would say a lot about what society is, but the reality is, you exist because of the way like society is.
Yeah, and there's so many more food banks popping up as well. Like it's not, there's a lot more that are having to set up because people just can't afford things at the moment.
I mean, did you see a picture recently, and it was like got around the internet, and it was like some Tory mayor and a Tory MP, and they went and like did a scissor cutting ceremony at a food bank. And it was for me, it was the way it was being celebrated, and they actually paid for a buffet and this kind of thing. It was completely tone deaf. Did you see that? And like,
I did.
What do you think of that kind of thing?
I mean, that it says a lot, doesn't it?
Aye.
Yeah, that is completely tone deaf. Yeah, we shouldn't be celebrating having to open food banks. We should be at a point where, you know, society are able to survive without needing a food bank, particularly, you know, like I was saying about the lady that I'd heard of before that was a full-time nurse, and, you know, they shouldn't be having to use a food bank. I mean, you think about, you know, all the clapping that people did on a Thursday and, you know, heroes of the pandemic, but then now reduced to the fact that because she's a single mum, she's having to use a food bank because she can't afford to feed her family.
I mean, do you find that a lot, like around sort of like the work that you do? That like what percentage, if you were to just guess, would you say are people who are in work who are accessing food banks?
I'd say it's a high percentage of people now. Perhaps when we first started, not so much. A lot of the people were out of work, and we often see people with mental health issues that are using the food banks that are out of work. But recently, yeah, people can be working full time and still not able to afford to go grocery shopping, and it's only going to get worse, especially when, you know, it's winter again. People are having to put their heating on.
Oh, for sure. Like for real, man. It's absolutely disgusting. And I don't know whether we're the 5th or the 6th biggest economy in the world. It's one of the two. But like whether it's the 5th or the 6th, none of this should be happening.
No,
I
it
think people
shouldn't.
have a lack of imagination when it comes to what politicians could actually do. With that level of resources and the amount of money we see committed to, say, like the PPE thing or like the scandal from that, like I bet you there wouldn't be a need for food banks if they suddenly decided to actually meet the needs of the millions of people living in poverty. I mean, like, do you feel that there's still a taboo like around this? Is the taboo increasing with the amount of people who are accessing food banks? And just before you answer, the reason I ask that is like somebody I know bumped into somebody that we know recently, and they were acting a bit strange. And it turns out that they were like on the way to the food bank, which was obviously a big shocker for us.
Yeah.
You know, does that play out in your experiences too?
Yeah, definitely. There's still such a huge stigma surrounding it. People, I obviously go down to these food banks and I hear from them as well, the people that are running them. And they've said, you can tell if somebody's new because they'll stand in the queue, they've got their head down. They don't want to, they don't really want to talk to anybody. They don't want to be recognized. It's not something that people are proud of, but also they shouldn't be ashamed of it because people are in need. And, as you say, it can happen to anyone. I had somebody the other day from a news channel that wanted an interview with me, but the proviso was that they would speak to somebody that had received the support. And despite asking round, nobody wants to put their face on TV and say, "Yeah, I'm using a food bank." So yeah, there is still a massive stigma about it.
What do you think the media's game was there? Like, why on earth would it be on a proviso to interview you and interview a service user? Like, I don't know what the game is there.
No, I don't either. Although somebody that follows and helps support and is actually one of the volunteers for the food bank named it poverty porn. So basically just the media just feeding into it. I quite liked that term. I think, it did describe a lot. I mean, they might have had something else in mind that was their objective, but it seems a bit odd because people don't want to put their face on telly and say, yes, I'm using a food bank.
You can understand that. Like, I mean, like, again, you like what I do is I'll try and put myself in that position and how I would feel. And I think I would feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
Which leads us to think, what do you think we can do? Like people who aren't accessing food banks, yet, maybe God knows what's going to happen. What can we do to sort of lessen that taboo and make it easier for those people, in your experience?
I think just opening up the conversation, making sure that, family and friends and close ones aren't struggling, that people are doing okay. Just checking in with people. If you notice that you've gone round and normally, they'd have a cupboard of food and offer you a drink and whatever. If that's not happening, then maybe just check in with them and be like, are you okay? Do you have access to these places? And also just signposting people, because if we talk about it, then it becomes less of a taboo and less of a stigma, hopefully. Just opening up that conversation with people.
Great stuff. There's a few comments here. I'll just put some up for you. Here we go. Robert Grady is saying rescue centres for all manner of pets has gone exponentially up as the cost of greed crisis spirals. I also like the fact you've used the correct terminology, which is cost of greed. So, I mean,
it's so true. And one of the things that we're hoping that the food bank will also achieve is to take some of that strain off rescue centres because they are absolutely overwhelmed. And if we can help people keep their animals in a loving home and then not having to give them up, then it also helps the rescue centres as well, because they've got those spaces that would otherwise be taken up needlessly, really. Because if somebody is loving their animal and they want to do right by their animal, if we can just keep them at home just by providing food or other essentials, we might as well do that.
Oh, without a doubt.
Better for everyone.
It is, man. It's I'm just kind of a bit sort of flabbergasted because I'm kind of getting overwhelmed with the thoughts of what I would be like in that situation. And then you guys would be there and it would just be such a relief. Do you know what I mean? It's very touching, to be honest, without trying to be all on the edge of tears, which is what I am, because anything to do with dogs is just me gone, at any time. Like, we've got 3. One's called Zeb. We've got 2 little ones as well, Scrappy and DJ. Sometimes they get on camera, but it's too hot for them up here today. So I was going to bring them because I just thought it would just be like a lovely thing, you know. But sadly not. Right, we've got some more here. So what we got? Joanne G. I think she's on our side. I think so too. How Ye is saying, obviously in reference to the toffs, they didn't pay for the buffet. They used food. Did they honestly use food bank supplies? Seriously, like that. Like, do us a favor, How Ye, go like send us a link for that, because I don't want to be spreading that in case they did. But if they did, it's even worse, man. Absolutely shocking. Joanne also says she can't even think about vets bills as well. I mean, honestly, the amount I've spent on these for the vets, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, I don't even know if I'm in a position to be able to do that now. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody, things are mad tight, and it's just like, what do you even do, mate? Honestly, thank you for being who you are. Like, I don't know, I don't think human beings do this enough. You are class. Thank you so much for just like being a beacon of hope, because obviously, honestly, since the 2019 election, my head's been right up my arse. There's been minimal hope. And I think like where I'm coming from now, and like since we've restarted this series, it's like speaking to people like you really does give us the lift. It shows that like there's people out there who care and are willing to just do it. When you work 2 jobs and you do this, I mean, Pride of Britain Award incoming, like seriously,
and you know,
get yourself amongst it.
There's so many good people though. I mean, as soon as I set it up, there were people coming forward wanting to volunteer, and despite all the awful like poverty that I guess I'm kind of seeing day in, day out now, there's so many people wanting to help, and I find that helps me as well. Like, it is easy to get sucked into like times that are hard, like they're really hard, but also people are stepping up, and we're kind of all caring for each other as humans. I mean, not everyone, but there's a lot
in it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I think we're finding each other again, because I think like you know, people obviously with the pandemic and whatever, we've been otherwise engaged, but like I think it's starting to bubble back up again, and the people who actually give a shit about other people are just thinking, sod it, we'll just have our own little cool gang, and everybody else can bugger off. Invite them in later when they're nicer.
And I'm getting my own little cool gang together.
I can tell, mate. And like seriously, if we can help you with anything, just let me know. Yeah.
Amazing.
I've got something here with all your details. So we'll just bang this up on the screen. Your Pet Foodbank CIC for the audio people. Phone number is 07479 273 636. That's 07479 273 636. yourpetfoodbank@gmail.com, www.yourpetfoodbank.co.uk. Did I get that right, Alison?
You did indeed, yeah. Thank you.
Sweet as. What I'm going to do is I'm going to snip this off for you, and then we'll just bosh it off on all of us things as a standalone thing, so it's not part of the big show. Well, it'll still be part of the big show, but there'll be another clip for you as well, because we're really keen to get whatever contribution we can make to getting the word out, innit?
That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody local...
Honestly, it's the very least we can do. There's your link back up on the screen there, just for the people on the way out. Thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. All right, take care.
And anything you need, seriously, I know people say this, but just give us a shout and we'll promote it and share it and all that cool shit.
Thank you so much. That's really
Cheers,
kind.
mate. All the best.
I appreciate it. All right, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya. That was Alison from Your Pet Foodbank Community Interest Company. And what a lovely lass she was. Speaking of lovely lasses, we have Alice Wolf right here. How are you doing?
I'm all right. It's not often I get called that. How are you?
Well, it was. I wouldn't take it that personally. It was like an interesting segue. I don't think you're lovely at all. How are you doing? You good? I do think that, as you well know, but like, you know, you've got to crack the funnies, haven't you? Were you listening to the last bit of that, were you?
Yeah. So I was there for the last bit. That was really lush. Yeah, no, she is a lovely lass, and like seems like a really, really good thing to get involved with. I think it would have made me too emotional. I think it's still a bit of quite a sore point with me, stuff like that, and it's really, really difficult for people who are struggling. So that's a good thing that they've got going. Excellent.
Honestly, I've got all the time in the world for her. Like, I mean, she's working 2 jobs and she's just stepped up to help the animals and obviously the owners of the animals, and it's just lush. And I just think, like, as I was saying to her there, we'll often put ourselves in that position and how we would feel. And just to know that there was actually somebody to call or there's somebody to get in touch with, it's just obviously set us off. And if anybody could see me bottom lip behind this pop shield here, it would have been like the whole time, right on the edge, because you know how much I love me dogs.
Well, yeah, we get like that over animals, don't we? Like
totally, more than humans, if I'm honest. Like, you know, select humans, I'd get the same, but like, you know, I'd honestly like animals more than I like humans. It's like on balance. I've never really fell out with an animal, but like humans, I seem to be able to fall out with really easily. So it's probably something to do with me. Or is it? Anyway, welcome back. How's your day been?
It's been hectic, but it's been canny. I've got a lot done, but hence why I'm like coming on a little bit later tonight.
Well, it's just one of them. I mean, it's just I've had a chat, and it's just like, obviously you've got to quite often work a bit later, run, boom. So sometimes that'll happen, won't it? And that's just the way it is. But that's effective communication. Sorry, you were saying?
I said life comes at you fast, but no, it's always good to kind of have other people on, I think, as well, and hear about really good stuff that's going on in the community. I love it.
Well, definitely, man, it's an opportunity as well, just for things to be a bit lighter, but also like to promote these amazing projects that people are doing off their own back, and like that's definitely something that I want us to be.
Yeah,
you know, like provide a platform for people to reach other people and spread the good word about what they do. But more to the point, if there's anybody in that particular area who needs help for their pets at the moment, then great. Maybe they've got wind of that, and that's just a magic thing. But anyway, big up Alison and everything that you do. I'm just going to do this quickly. Please subscribe to the Cow Daily YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/c/Cow Daily. And the reason we want to do that is we're trying to monetize the channel. So if you are watching on Facebook, if you could go across and watch it over there and comment there, that would be absolutely top. And also when the video ends, if you want to go on there and leave a nice comment and like it, it helps with the algorithm. So I've been told. Also, Cow Daily mailing list, link in the description. And also, if you would like to become a patron, go to patreon.com/Cow Daily. Housekeeping out of the way, shall we have a look at something pretty cool? What I've done is I've put together a short video collage because there was so much video flying around, and it's about a minute of like how it started and how it is now, whatever the bloody hell that meme is. I've absolutely butchered that, but it's absolutely boiling in this attic. Seriously, like seriously, it's ridiculous. But anyway. Actually, no, I'll tell you what I'll do first. What we're going to talk about is the anti-raids movement, right? And the best way to describe this is this viral video from Glasgow last year. Get it in. So when you see that, how does it make you feel?
Oh, like I still get chills watching that video, man. It's absolutely class. You know, obviously that was last year, and I don't think like at the time I'd seen anything like that before. I had heard of you know, people resisting immigration raids and stuff like that, but I'd just seen nothing like it on that scale. And the fact that, you know, it worked, it was successful, that you know, they weren't able to take the 2 guys who they had in the van. It was just it was a beautiful thing, and I'll never get sick of seeing that.
Wonderful, wasn't it? Well, fast forward to last weekend. This is in Peckham, and it's happened again.
defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
Get in. Right, so obviously I'm aware there was a smorgasbord of stuff going on there, and it went from police brutality to like them being released and them singing. We'll just push for time this week, so I didn't want to go through it bit by bit. I appreciate it. It was a bit of a roller coaster, though. Firstly, let's unpack it. The first bit, the police brutality. What are you saying?
Well, first of all, I just had to turn that down because it was blaring out the speakers here, and there was just a lass screaming. So I'm pretty aware that my neighbours might think there's
My
something
apologies to your neighbours.
If I get the busies knocking on the door, this is why I'm fine. By the way, I'm fine. Just back on my lefty bullshit. Yeah, that's I saw that first bit, the clip before of that, and that was that was really, really kind of hard going to watch actually. Because I've seen all the other footage that was not a violent crowd, and I've seen like the headlines of the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail one was appalling actually. I won't even go into it because they don't deserve the publicity. But just stuff like several kind of social media commenters calling them a mob. It's like that is not a mob. They were not violent. They were just chanting. They were not they were not armed. And it kind of seeing people get shoved around like that, it's always a bit like, oof, especially when you're seeing people getting knocked to the floor and you've got several, kind of people basically kicking them, like kind of what the consequences of that can be. Bit frightening. But obviously that the outcome was something else. And, yet again, they've been made to turn back, and they've not been able to take the person they came for.
And most important now, when they're being spirited off to Rwanda in some kind of like weird replay of extraordinary rendition, hopefully without the torture, but we can't be too sure. Also, as well, I mean, this, as far as I could tell when I posted about this on social media earlier today, it's not been widely reported that it's a like-for-like thing with Rwanda. So Congolese refugees in Rwanda, one person will be sent to Britain. Sorry, that's me, dog. Shut up! Sorry, it had to be done. We just had a last from Your Foodbank there, and I'm all like, I love dogs, mate. Shut up!
Shut up!
Shut up! He thinks I'm still telling him to shut up. Sorry, Zeb, I'm not telling you to shut up again. Because you've shut up. But anyway, what was I talking about before he interrupted?
We're talking about the like-for-like with Rwanda.
Correct. So Congolese refugees, they are 1-to-1. So Congolese refugees will be sent to the UK. Obviously, refugees that aren't white will be sent to Rwanda. And that's a factual statement in 2022 in Britain, by the way. Up to a point. I shouldn't be so obtuse. Ukrainian refugees will not be sent there because of the optics of that. And that's it. The optics of sending European white people and the way that those optics have been like managed, and the consent has been managed with the population in the UK by the media, well, by large sections of the media, that is fucking disgusting. So big up Peckham anti-raids, big up Glasgow anti-raids, big up anti-raids. Thanks, Auntie.
Yeah, no, there was, I think it was Lewisham anti-raids were quite heavily involved in that one as well, that we saw in Peckham, and there's a few other anti-raids groups as well. Sorry if I've not got all of the names right, but there's some really, really active groups in London, but they, and in Scotland, as we already know, but they are starting to become more popular throughout the country as well, as people are kind of getting inspired by what they're seeing. And I know we've talked about the kind of anti-raids stuff before, and I think it needs to be driven home that a lot of work goes into this, and that it's not just about, these things don't happen by accident. It's not all the neighbours rushing out into the street. A lot of them have kind of done training around this, done a lot of organising, done a lot of, and when I say organising, I mean, they're just going out and talking to people in their community, knocking on neighbours' doors, forging those links. For all of these kind of bloody racist Twitter accounts you've got saying, I mean, this guy who was going to be taken away in Peckham, I don't know how many people were just desperate for him to be a sex offender or something. It was really, really weird. It was almost like when he, well, why else would they be coming
It's
to
funny you
get
should
him?
mention that. Can I just interject at this point? I saw a tweet just before we went on earlier, and it was from one of these like ghoul sock puppet right wing fascist accounts, and it was all like, the conflation that they do. All these lefties when they deport the Rochdale grooming gang people, they'll be there for them as well because that's who they support. What a fucking bunch of fucking cunts.
No, it's
anyway.
it's just a bunch of false equivalents and straw man arguments, and that's what it is. They were the ones I saw were going on about hate preachers. Some of whom I'm not being, are British born. The people they're talking about, kind of, sort of like Islamic hate speech, and they're saying, oh, you're keeping them in the country, and it's actually by communities going out and speaking to each other and breaking down those barriers, you're making communities safer. You are. By kind of saying we're all going to look out for each other and we're all going to do this. That's a really good thing, and that is what a large part of anti-raids work is. It's not just about going out and stopping the vans. So yeah, good on them, fair play to them. Get involved if that's what you want to do, or even if you can't be heavily involved, support them when they do that. There's lots of different ways to do that by finding out what's going on in your area. But yeah, the amount of I've heard kind of linked to the Rwanda about lefty lawyers. That's what it is. It's just like, really, like, I'm not saying they don't exist, but there ain't that many of them, and this was over the initial ruling saying that the plane couldn't leave for Rwanda, which was obviously then overturned by the High Court. And it was, it's the lefty lawyers. And this is coming from people like Boris Johnson and, and Jacob Rees-Mogg. They're using that word very, very deliberately. And now it's just being applied to anyone, who will not support them in sending people to their deaths.
Yeah, quite frankly, that's exactly what it is. And the reason they can do this is because they've manufactured the consent of large sections of the population to then elect them. I'm not really sure, like, if the whole lot of the sort of people who are anti-refugee are for this. But I might just be like trying to see the good in all humans at that point. Have you noticed anything like for or against what I've just said? Or would you say that the people who are like bang, bang, get the refugees gone are like loving this?
Yeah, I have seen a few. And one of them's actually come from a lass I went to school with as well.
Oh, God, lasses that we went to school with. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's her. I'll speak to separately. I think it's I know a lot about her background and stuff and things like that, and I do try to, I wouldn't say she's an outright fascist, but she's saying some really racist stuff. But I do like to meet people where they're at when it's appropriate, and try and challenge these things. That's not to say tolerate racism or fascism or anything like that. You don't do that, but
No.
sometimes there's ways of speaking to people, I think, which might be more effective than going in guns a-blazing, which I'm also known to do sometimes.
Well, I think when it's appropriate, and yes, you are, but you're also like a person, just for the record, who will sit and take the time to talk to people with opposing views, which is literally, I think, one of the main channels to actually, like, hopefully gaining peace at some point in the future. Dialogue important, I would say.
Well, it is, and we've all known people who, but the kind of places we kind of grew up around, we know people who've been involved in stuff when they were younger with, who were basically, and I am going to use the word groomed here by far right groups, because that's exactly what they do, only to kind of then sort of see what they were really about further down the line. And now they talk a lot about, trying to stop other young people from getting involved in the same stuff, and they're quite heavily involved in that, and fair play to them for that. There's a need for that kind of work. So yeah, aside from the usual, soccer counts and all the rest of it, I have seen a couple who do seem to kind of have some support for it. But I think with a lot of ignorance, about, it's going to, I'm not saying it doesn't come from a place of racism, because it does, but kind of really gripping onto that lie of it's going to stop the human traffickers. It's not. there's been, even before this deal that we've spun with Rwanda, there's been a rise of human trafficking in Rwanda over the last few years. And Rwanda do not have the best track record for dealing with it either.
No.
And so now we've got this, we're going to see an even bigger rise of it. But if there's going to be more people being shipped out of there who are desperate to get away from it. So it's going to do precisely fuck all for human trafficking. And just a really weird way of like saying, oh, we're going to deal with human trafficking by becoming human traffickers. That doesn't make any sense. That is literally what they're doing. The plane that is due to leave tonight, initially, I think that's meant to be going in the next sort of hour or two, as far as I know. That was initially meant to have over 100 people on it. And now saying it isn't going to have more than 7 on. I think there's still some like last minute negotiations. It will be taking off. I mean, Liz Truss was saying this morning, it will be taking off even if it's empty. Even if every single person kind of got a chance to appeal. And this is like going to cost the taxpayer at least £250,000 to potentially jet off an empty plane, or one that's got 7 people on it at the most. I mean, if they're not just doing that to prove a point, this isn't about saving money, about saying, oh, you know, we're full or anything like that. This is just about outright cruelty. And she said she kind of ended up squirming a bit and sort of going back on her words a bit. But I think she said it was establishing principle. And that's, you know, so they were going to be going ahead regardless. And it was
fuck her. Honestly, just fuck her. Like establishing principle. You wouldn't know principles if it smacked you in the face, you fucking cunt. Like you're sending your human trafficking people and trying to dress it up as principles. That is, in a sentence, the issue with Britain. It's like doing vile shit and then trying to dress it up as something else. Like the Empire was very similar. It's like, well, we made the trains run on time, or the elephant sedan chairs when you were like robbing India. I mean, I haven't got the stats in front of us at the minute. I've been researching India for the book, right? Startling. Like the size of the, like just from an economic standpoint, we know about the human cost. I'll come on to that on a different day.
Right, okay.
The size of the Indian economy, which obviously benefited more Indian people then compared to the size of the Indian economy after the empire, it was robbed blind. And we knew this, but the figures, I'll send you to them, right? I'll send you them.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely just as, like, I was like this about Ireland, but I thought, like, you know, get your fucking head on, because, like, you know, your ancestry's Ireland and that. No, same impact when it was India and everywhere else. It was just, like, horrendous, some of this stuff. Disgusting, in fact. Like, people need to just speak the truth. Britain and its history is a disgrace. Like,
it really is.
None of the supposed engineering works or whatever else it is that people try and like say the empire was good for makes up for the genocide and murder, because that's what it is. I mean, I haven't even got on to Kenya yet. Bloody hell. But anyway, I digress. Let's bring it back to this particular section. But a lot of what I'm finding out now, and knew some of anyway, does feed into this issue. But what I'd like to do is put up some advice for people who are putting their bodies on the line. It's from NetPol. So NetPol, for the audio people, are saying there's been little media coverage of how violent the police response was to community resistance to the immigration raid in Peckham. We've had reports of officers pushing people to the ground and stamping on them, with one protester suffering a partially dislocated hip. I mean, do you know how much power you've got to stamp on somebody's hip to dislocate it? It's really, like, that is bad. So anyway, NetPol goes on. Normally, we suggest that although the complaint system is operated by the police themselves and is slow and obstructive, making a complaint is worth considering if you sustain injuries. However, we urge extreme caution in instances where police may look for revenge arrests. Police in Bristol used formal complaints last year as a way to identify and arrest Kill the Bill campaigners. We can expect the Met to seek arrests as retaliation for the embarrassing walk of shame forced on the officers yesterday. If you were injured or assaulted yesterday, we are compiling individual testimony. You can find the contact details in the description of this podcast. And it says at the bottom, with the Met wanting to make an example of some of those who protested yesterday for the embarrassment officers experienced, it should go without saying that you should think carefully about the images you share online. Revenge policing is part of our reality now. Alice, any thoughts on revenge policing and what that's about? Because
I've heard it. I've heard of it before, and I think it is a really real concern. It's terrifying that that's even got to, that's even going to be done. Sort of in line with that, I don't really think it's a coincidence that, again, the Daily Mail have printed like the names and photographs of quite a lot of the people involved. I think one was a counsellor, one's there's a few other people who've been identified with the usual kind of rhetoric around them, kind of putting them as ringleaders. It was kind of sort of bitterly funny that the Mail were also expressing kind of deep confusion that they were trying to contact the anti-raids groups for comments and saying they didn't they weren't making it clear who their leaders were. And so bear in mind that not everybody, but like a lot of people involved in anti-raids are raging anarchists, and like they really, really, the police as well never ever understand why they don't have a leader. And they, they get asked this all the time. They can't understand the concept of being able to operate without that sort of hierarchy. But the anti-raids groups, they don't have a defined ideology. They're not a defined ideology. They're an organized community, and that's what they find so deeply confusing. And that's what they are. They're community members protecting their community members, and they are going to be probably going to be targeted by the police, as we have seen. It happened in Glasgow as well, in Kenmure Street as well.
Right, yeah.
The same things kind of happened there. And I would kind of agree with what Netpol was saying. Be really, as much as it's inspiring and it's good to kind of see, footage and photographs of this, be really, really careful if you can see people's faces. Try and use, I think there's different ways that you can blur people out that can't be easily removed as well by somebody else. Doing that, just be really, really careful about what you're showing and whether it needs to be seen at all, because it can, with the best will in the world, put people in real danger.
For real. I approve of everything you've said. A few more. Armandeep Singh Dillon says, funniest part of yesterday was hands down notes and the pride patches on some of the cops just before they rushed us. As they punched my friend in the face and ripped out my earring, that allyship meant the world. It's funny, but there's a serious point for our nation's children there. Like, you can wear all of the patches that you like, but if you go around punching LGBTQ people, you want an ally, coppers.
No, exactly. And that's the term. This is what I think of when I think of the term virtue signaling, not normally what other people often use when they say virtue signaling, which is usually just a way of kind of reactionary people describing anybody who has the slightest bit of human empathy. When I think of virtue signaling, it's exactly this kind of thing. It's totally the whole corporate pride thing. I mean, we could do an entire show on that. Like,
we should
actually, because like a lot of it just like really, really kind of makes me cringe. And
actually, it's Pride Month. Should we want to do it next week?
Yeah, let's do it next week.
Cool. There we go. We'll do a bit on it next week. Pride Month and all that.
I've got loads of stuff I can give you for that, and it's the same. It's the same with that. It's trying to, kind of tidy up their image, like around their treatment of LGBT people and changing policies. But actually, it's not. If part of that is going to be carrying out, a lot of people sometimes claim asylum because they are gay or because they are trans and they are from a country where that is going to get them killed. If, you are the police with, your trans pride flags spray painted on the side of your van, which I've seen around Newcastle recently, and you're carrying out like an immigration raid on an LGBT person to take them to a country where they are going to be even more in danger, and Rwanda is one of those countries.
It is.
Then it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing.
Absolutely not. Take some comments before we move on. Shelley Kelly, it's absolutely disgusting. Quite right, it
Yes.
is. Colin is saying human trafficking for votes instead of cash.
It's a good way of putting it, of summing it up, really. Yeah.
In it. Anti-raid groups are awesome, says Robert.
They are.
And also Joanne says Twitter was bloody awful about Peckham. I missed most of it, to be honest.
A lot of it was awful. There was loads of really nice stuff as well. And I think on the balance, I did see, maybe it's obviously just because of the algorithms and everything that I follow, but I did see more nice stuff than I did see bad, even though I did see a lot of bad stuff as well. But again, some of them are blatant sock accounts.
Fucking too right. Cheers for all of that as well. It was very informative. Obviously I'm trying to learn as we do this as well. So I appreciate what your input in that, because I've learned some things. You were going to tell us about, was it Loneliness Awareness Week? Is that right?
Yes. So there's been, we do, when we're kind of just, we always kind of have a discussion a day or two before, don't we, about what we're going to cover.
Yeah.
And sometimes we cover like the really big things in the news. Other times we just ignore them completely, because there's a lot being said about them already, and we want to focus on some smaller stuff. So yeah, I saw it was like when I was looking at all the Peckham stuff. Actually, I kind of, and you kind of see what, because I do, Twitter's a bin fire, and I do tend to stay away from it a lot. But I do always look at the the hashtags that are trending.
Yeah.
At the time, in Loneliness Awareness Week was one of them, which I'm all for anything that is raising awareness about very serious problems. But it's just one of those things where you think it's fucking depressing that we're even having to do this. Yeah, so I just thought it'd be something we could chat about.
Yeah, man, for real.
Kind of look at what is, particularly like loneliness in the UK at the minute, and what do we really do about it? And I guess when I saw the hashtag, one of the things that sprung to mind is, I can't even remember who was appointed, because honestly, it doesn't fucking matter. But I think the Conservatives voted in elected or assigned, I don't know what the right word is today, a Minister for Loneliness.
Really?
No, I can't remember
who the hell have they chosen? Michael Fabricant or something? Just to troll the shit out of us lonely people.
Yeah. Mark Francois or something.
Can't like to be like, I'll stay lonely if I have to be alone around him.
No, I can't remember who it was who got appointed, and I think it's quite significant that probably most people wouldn't be able to remember off the top of their head anyway, because really, what have they done?
Yeah.
To me, again, it's that virtue signaling, it's that token gesture of look at the reasons why people are lonely in the first place. People are going to become isolated. They're going to become lonely if they've been sanctioned, if you are cutting bus services in their area, if you are cutting youth services in their area. It's like the reason why loneliness might be a bit of a problem, on the fascist sinkhole we currently call the UK, is well. Really is because of continual attacks on the services that kind of really help people and really support people. They did the same with they appointed a minister of domestic violence, and everyone was like, oh, isn't this great, and it was to really, but really look at the problems and look at where we can improve things. It's like literally you have thousands of IDVAs, of which I was one at the time, had to get out of that game for my own mental health.
Can you, what's an IDVA?
An IDVA is an independent domestic violence advisor.
Cool. So remember the audience though, they probably don't know that.
Yeah, so somebody who supports, but there's domestic violence support workers, there's refuge staff as well. There's lots and lots of people who might be kind of involved in that. And it's like, we've been screaming for years, telling you exactly what the issues are, things like universal credit, making people have joint claims, is going to be a big catalyst for financial abuse, cutting mental health services, drug services, everything that you can think of. The housing crisis, all of these things stop people from getting away. You keep cutting out, the domestic abuse services themselves, and then go, oh, I wonder what the problem is. Let's pay a minister lots and lots of money, when it's like, we can tell you for free, like we have been for years.
The thing is, there has to be will, and it seems to me like, and it was the same with Labour previously. I recall, like through my work, like it's just fucking optics, man. And I think anybody who, like yourself, or well, to an extent myself as well, who's had like dealings through work with MPs, or it's usually about how it looks for them. It's very rare that you get an MP who genuinely cares about the brief. It's not like it's not just some kind of stepping stone. So I mean, that's the top end of society with the MPs. Like from bottom end, I mean, do you want to? Are you happy talking about times you've been lonely? Because I'll do it if you want. Like I think it's probably something. Shall I start? Shall I do that?
You start, yeah.
Right. Well, after my operation, as you know, like couldn't walk, only could leave the house to go to the pool to learn how to walk properly again, and then would go home, and that would wreck us for the rest of the day, and would lie down. People who don't know, had a spinal surgery operation, and since then as well, put on about 5 stone, something like that. I've lost 3 of it, and I've got another 2 to get back off. But like that was also like seemed to prolong that. So what happened was I went from the isolation in the house, and you know all this, but I'm talking as if you don't. Isolation in the house, pandemic, probably a few weeks of feeling half decent. In the middle of that, bereavement, felt super lonely because of all those 3 things in a wanna. What that then did for me, definitely when I was like sort of like basically I had to, you know this, but I had to like sleep on the floor like for about a year after the op. It just like seemed like I was straightening my spine out again, and it actually did, but like that's a whole different thing. So I felt suicidal, and I also got something positive out of it. And I'm not trying to be that guy who spins a positive out of like something horrible. I just have to tell the whole range of what that ultimately became for me. I realized who was there for us and who wasn't, like who gave a fuck about us and who didn't. And also I realized like how strong I actually am, because I was in a world of shit mentally because of all of those things, and being unable to walk while all of that's happening was horrific, because it's not like I could just like, shall I go out for a run? Because that's like what the advice you're given. Exercise, way past all this. Listen, for like, that works for some people, but for some people it doesn't. And I'm qualified to speak about that because I used to do fucking marathons and I had a 34 resting heart rate, right? And I wasn't happy. Work that out. So I was about as fit as you could be, but I wasn't fully happy. But I was definitely happier than when I couldn't walk. So I realized I was medicating by over-exercising, and that was actually what had fucked me back up. Yeah. So I was in this like world of hurt, like the hurt locker previous to that. So the loneliness aspect of it was just horrific. And like, I had to overcome a lot of that. And it also gave us time to like have a look at myself. And that's what the positive bit is. I feel a much stronger person as a result of that. But at the same time, and this is key, not everybody comes out of that. And it doesn't mean I'm like, it's not a league table. Like, well, I won the loneliness thing and I didn't die. It's not that. Like, it's a very complex set of circumstances. And I'm just very keen that people would watch this and not feel like they lost or they were weak or anything like that, because everybody's on a different path. And like, I just decided not to die. I just decided that like I wasn't going to do it, and I didn't know how. And I've spent my life since then just working my way out, most of the time alone, like obviously because of the pandemic. So during the pandemic, that's what I was doing. Another thing that made us feel lonely during the pandemic was Rishi Sunak saying everybody's being taken care of and looked after, during the time where they're banging the pots and pans. Yes. I got £0 from the government. That's £0. Whereas other self-employed people were getting like, obviously the self-employed check or whatever it was, $2,500 or something every so often. And I mean, that would have been handy. Like, so I went from like, not being able to like work, because I was getting better, to then not be able to put events on because of the pandemic or actually progress any of me stuff. And being alone with all of that whilst being utterly skinned, and then not being able to do what I've always done, which is just graft and just get past it and just do my best and turn it around. So that all of that over these past few years has been intensely lonely. And I'm proud that I'm at this point now in my life where I feel so much more comfortable in my own skin as a result of it. Because you know why? I realized that all I really actually need is me. And I like me. So that's a good start. You know
that's what I was going to ask there, because you're kind of talking about all of that, those experiences as if, kind of, it's obviously things are a lot better now. So it's got, so kind of looking at what really helped kind of that change.
What helped? Just literally deciding. And if people don't want to hear this shit, they want to like, I've done the counselor and I've done this, I've done that, and I've done the third, and I've done that all before around bereavement and whatever. That seemed to give us the tools. So I wouldn't suggest anybody does what I'm about to say unless you've like been in counselling and you've developed some kind of like tools that stay with you. I realized that counselling wasn't going to help us because it wasn't like they could tell us anything that I hadn't already experienced, if that makes sense. So I just decided not to die. It was literally that basic. I just decided not to die. And in the first instance, that was because I didn't want anybody around about us to experience what I felt when I lost my friend to suicide. And also, I mean, like last year, as you know, I was ill all year. That is intensely lonely and isolating. And I honestly thought I was going to die for a lot of that time. Like I was not improving. I was getting worse. And at the time I felt like, on Street Fighter, when you've got a power bar from 100% to 0, at my worst, I was about 7%. It was terrible and awful and horrible. And
obviously physical illness and, and disabilities, chronic health conditions are a massive, massive reason why people experience loneliness. And that's why it's so important to make sure that people are having access to health services. I mean, it goes without saying that the pandemic really kind of hit a lot of people hard as well, particularly people who are really social. I always feel like in some ways, I kind of got off lightly with that. One, because I don't live alone. I think if you do, that can make things a lot difficult, especially when we weren't allowed to leave the house. But I'm somebody who does quite well by myself for long periods of time as well. Some people
same. I do, but it was too long.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I kind of struggled when it started coming to socialize with people again, because I realized it's not good for me to be like that for too long, but I will do if left to my own devices and do that. And I think that's where you've got to kind of know the difference between loneliness and solitude. And, people will seek solitude out. Sometimes it's not a negative thing, that people just need to recharge the batteries. I really need to do that. Sometimes I kind of go from one extreme to the other. I'm like, need quiet time. World's too noisy, need ear defenders. I need to block out the light, like sensory overload, all the rest of it. And then I wake up one day and it's like, right, I want to jump into a mosh pit with loads of screaming strangers and just throw myself around and have a really, really good time. It's like, so I think
I missed that too. I'll tell you another thing that's made us feel lonely recently. Pulling out of a major festival that had booked us to do a venue there and all of that, because I don't feel like it's safe because the whole COVID situation is what it is. But that's become like a taboo to talk about and stuff, and that feels fucking lonely, to be honest. Because people don't want to hear it.
No, they don't want to hear it at all.
And I could have done with the money from that thing as well, but I just don't feel like it's safe.
No.
And even saying that out loud, I feel like, oh God, I'm gonna get battered for this. You know what I mean? And I'm telling the truth. It's like I'm not lying here. It's like it just feels like super lonely, dude.
It's fucking hard. I mean, I know you know how I feel about festivals. Again, but again, that part of that kind of ties into what we're talking about, actually, because I can often feel like really lonely in large crowds of people. I get really lost in them. It's different when I'm going to see a band or I'm at a rave, and again, you're throwing yourself, just dancing with a bunch of strangers. That's a really, really lovely thing for me.
Yeah.
And I really like that feeling, but I've often struggled all through my life, and that is basically down to neurodivergency, of which I will not go into the exact details of what that is yet, because it's probably for another show, and we're still figuring out what that is.
It's a work in progress,
and what it looks like. But it's become very, very clear. Kind of as I've got older and older, and it was always blamed by doctors on other things like epilepsy and everything, which I've talked about on the show before. But yeah, I was like the weird kid in school. Like from like a really young age. Then kind of teens were like a little bit better because I had lots of weird friends. So you kind of find your own
weird
little
friends are good.
You find your own little rabble. And then I discovered raves, which was great. Definitely never ever felt lonely at a rave.
Do you know what it is, right? See, raves. Like people go like, oh, raves and whatever, terrible, like pills, and I literally started having like real confidence through the experience of going to raves and taking pills.
Yeah, I was able to find that I was able to have really authentic conversations and was never like masking. Like you do start unconsciously masking when you realize there's something a little bit odd about you. And it means that you feel like nobody ever really knows you, but that kind of all breaks down when you're at a rave, really.
It is.
You're kind of able to let people see your authentic self and have a really, really good time with a bunch of other people while you're just having a bit of a wild one.
You remember young Alex, the sound tech young Alex? Do you remember him?
Yes.
Yeah, lovely lad, isn't he? I don't think he'd mind us talking about this because he's been on talking about autism before. Well, Alex is autistic, and I know coming to raves and things like that, he's told us before that he feels like it helps him like sort of like interact with people differently and how he can feel things differently. And I think that's beautiful, and I think these are admissible things that can be said about like the positives of raves and whatnot.
Yeah, and I totally identify with that, and I remember that actually, and I think he spoke about that really, really well, and I kind of I identified like with a lot of it. But yeah, there's lots of reasons why people do, but part of how we've been having to live increasingly is why we might be experiencing loneliness. And I used to do a module, like a training module for staff, like health staff on this years ago. It was kind of part of it was tied to domestic abuse, but it was spoken about in the wider sense as well, and saying it is something that needs to be addressed, because when you look at it, actually loneliness has effects on your health. It makes people ill. It has a tremendous like human and financial cost to us as well. And it's about, how do we get back to our communities? But this is the whole thing about, I'd just say if we want to tackle it honestly, instead of just appointing a minister for loneliness or putting hashtags, it's really driving home the changes that we need. That we need to make, whether it be kind of more flexible working from staff. I'm not just going to say just working from home, because actually that, for some people, that was really hard. But it's kind of having worker-led working days, really. Some people do better in offices, other people do better working from home. And it's about that, kind of better work-life balance, which is determined by workers and not by bosses. Really, that kind of stuff, and funding all of our services properly as well. It makes for healthier communities. In some ways, it ties a lot to the raids that we're talking about as well. When you're doing all of these things, you have healthier communities, and that's what you want, and that's what we're kind of losing as we're just kind of increasingly forced into a pay bills and die situation.
Quite. Absolutely spot on, and a great place to end the show, I feel.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here once again. I always appreciate it. Do you know what it is? As soon as I said that, like there was the first breeze of the day came through the window. I'm absolutely. I've got an ice pack behind us, right, and it's like warm. Like it's took an hour to get warm.
Is it
Sitting here.
Gross.
So there's me whinge about it all. Slaz is on here saying, "Did you hear Jack became a dad yesterday?" I did. Big up Jack. You remember Jack, the guitar player?
Oh, I guess.
He's a father.
Oh, no way. Oh,
So congratulations to you and your partner, Mint. Lovely looking kid as well. Like texts after his dad, doesn't he?
Is absolutely lush. Oh yeah, no, Jack will make a great dad. That's really.
Aye, cheers for that, Slaz. Big, he's saying Nelly Dennis. That's his stage name. But yeah, I knew who he was. I could not remember. Like, because it's so hot in here. I'm honestly winging my way through this show because I'm just raked in sweat. Seriously. But anyway, all the best, mate. I'm going to go off and get the other ice pack out the fridge. Because seriously, it's so hot. It's ridiculous. Right. What do I do again? I go to the thing and I say goodbye. Here's the final closing titles. Goodbye.